Welcome to the Alchemy Lounge podcast, and in this week's episode we are going to be working with the lunar phases to plan your business strategy, so stay tuned. I'm your host, Victoria Quance, a lifelong practicing witch and author of The Witch Way to Manifest. And after helping hundreds of people all around the world with incorporating practical magic into their business and lifestyle, I bring to you the first podcast blending personal psychology and the power of the universe with practical tools and modern alchemy to show you how to enhance your business and your well-being in the most natural way possible. This is the Alchemy Lounge podcast, where magic becomes your competitive advantage, not just a hobby. Welcome to this week's episode of the Alchemy Lounge podcast, and we are talking all things lunar today, and we are going to be mapping your business plan to the lunar cycles and the moon phases. So we are now, at the time this episode is going to air, we have the new moon in Leo coming up this week. So this episode will drop on the 10th of August, and if you are based in the UK, the new moon will be on the 12th. Now, this is a new moon that is a little bit special because it is also a solar eclipse. So the way I like to think of a solar eclipse is very much like a fresh slate. Okay, it kind of wipes the slate clean and gives us that very much fresh, bright new energy. But also we want to loosen our grip on the solar eclipse. That's how I remember it. And what I mean by that is letting go of how we envisage things are going to come into fruition. So if you've listened to my previous episodes, you'll know I've spoke about the new moon before and how we can use the new moon energy for setting intentions and planting. So we'll have a little bit of a recap of that during this episode, but I want to talk about all the other lunar phases as well. But when it comes to a solar eclipse, it kind of gives us that acceleration. So everything that we are planting and planning gets a little bit of a speed up. Okay, we start to accelerate that process, but we want to loosen our grip as to what that is going to look like. Now, I've said this previously where entrepreneurs very much like to kind of skip over the planning phase. We kind of want to jump into the implementation. So we have an idea and then we want to run with it straight away. It is the entrepreneurial curse. It's why we are often so incredibly busy and don't always actually take things to completion or fulfillment. So we want to kind of hold back a little bit in that we are just literally setting our intentions and securing our ideas, but also not getting too attached to how that actually comes into fruition. The steps and the how will present themselves, especially with a solar eclipse. Now, we are in Leo energy at this time, so we are very much focusing on your visibility and leadership. So as we go through, I'm going to talk about 4 different lunar phases with you. And these are the 4 phases that I use in my own personal framework that I use each and every month to plan everything out in my business. And what this enables me to do, and it enables my clients to do as well, is to get really organized, but also it doesn't add anything extra to your plate. What we are doing is we are taking everything that you are currently juggling and trying to do all of the time, each and every day throughout the month, and we're basically spacing it out so that you know exactly what you're doing each and every week. And if one of those weeks is a little bit more restful, you don't feel guilty about it because it's actually part of your strategy. So let's start with the new moon. This is where we kind of begin. So the new moon at the time of recording is going to be on the 12th of August. So if you're listening to this in August, the 12th is going to be day 1. Okay. If you're listening to this at any other time, look when the next new moon is, and the day of the new moon is going to be day 1. So this is the start of phase 1. So days 1 to 7 is your planting phase. Okay, so this is where we are looking at visions and intentions. I'm not going to go into loads of detail around that because we had an episode a couple of weeks ago that it was all about intentions, so do go back and have a listen to that one. But this phase is all about the more internal actions. So we're not going out there and launching, we're not going out there and implementing straight away. This is when we are going to be journaling, if that is something that you enjoy. You might be mapping out your offers, you're determining what is going to be your single focus for the next lunar cycle. So for the next 29 days, what is the one key priority? And it might be that when you start to get into these processes and using this framework, that actually things happen a lot quicker than what you're used to. And that can seem a little bit backwards because you'll actually feel like you're doing less because you've spread it out and you've actually got a bit of structure on the go. But that can actually lead to quicker results. Whenever we actually align our energies to our rhythms, especially if you're a female entrepreneur, then this can be really beneficial. So you might find things happen quicker, in which case you can then bring in a second focus or priority area. But in this initial planning phase and the planting phase, just focus on one thing. What is the most important thing for you to take to completion this month? Okay, that's what you're going to focus on. So it might be mapping out an offer, it might be journaling on what that might look like in terms of your intention and your vision. It could be your content planning, anything that involves kind of like the preparation work. Okay, that is what your focus is going to be on days 1 to 7. And often this gets skipped because 7 days of planning each and every month for a lot of business owners feels like too much. It feels like they're not doing anything. It feels like they're not being productive, and it can feel like they're wasting time. And I get it. And especially when we are so creative and we want to get out there and we want to be helping people, we love to be doing. But this is still doing, it's just in a different way, and it's planning and it's mapping and it's just laying those foundations. And I promise this makes it so much easier as you then go into the next stages. But if we haven't got this, what actually happens is you end up doing this as you go along. And that's where you can get really scattered, and it can be like you've got 100 tabs open at any one time because you're planning your offer, you're planning your social media content, you're working out what it is that you want, you're working on your goals, you're looking at your revenue targets, and it's all happening all at once and it gets too much. So we're going to spend days 1 to 7 prepping for the month. Okay, so that is phase 1. A question to ask yourself in that phase, because we've got the Leo energy right now, so if it is August when you're listening to this, a question to ask yourself as you are doing that planning is, where are you playing small? So the Leo energy that we have around right now is going to call you out on that. Okay, Leo does not play small. Leo likes to take center stage. So where are you holding yourself back? So as you're planning and you're setting those intentions, have a second look at them and ask yourself, what would you do, or what would those intentions be if you were coming more from a place of service and actually the desire to help and make changes? Okay, come at this from a perspective of the people that you're going to help and you're going to work with, rather than what you feel is possible for you. That's when your ego is going to get involved. Ego can pop up an awful lot during Leo season, and it's not about you. In the nicest way possible, it is not about you. Your business is not you. Yes, it's a reflection of you. Yes, it's an extension of you, but you are separate from it. So your business goals especially are, in the nicest possible way, nothing to do with you personally. So we don't want to attach them to your self-worth, to your self-belief, to what you think is possible or realistic. We want to switch that angle slightly, especially at this time of year, to what your intentions and goals would be if you came purely from the desire to serve and to help. And just see how that changes things and how that shifts your intentions. And then your plans may look completely different from that place as well, in the best way. Okay, so then we move on to phase 2. So this is during the waxing phase of the moon, and this is days 8 to 14. And this is your building phase. Okay, so this is where we start to get really visible. This is when we start to actually build momentum. We are creating content. We are perhaps recording episodes. So no prizes for guessing when this was actually recorded. It wasn't the day before, I tell you. It was during a waxing phase. So it's a really good time for us to be doing things that are later going to be visible. Okay, you can also link this to your own energetic cycles as well, by the way. So I always say this to people, that if you want to work with the lunar cycles, that can be really helpful, because it's then working with the collective energy. So you know that your prospects and your team and your suppliers and anyone that has anything to do with your business is also going to be in that collective energy as well. But also listen to your own energetic cycles. And if you have a menstrual cycle, then you might want to follow that as well. But this is where you can have kind of overlapping energies that you want to work with. So if you need any help with that, that is my area of expertise. So we can always look at what plans work best for you as an individual. But for the purpose of this podcast, we are just going to be looking at the moon. But just keep that in mind, that your own energy cycle might be slightly different. So during days 8 to 14, we are doing things around visibility. We are building momentum. You might start to look into collaborative opportunities during this time. You might be obviously making sales. You might be really connecting and reaching out to your audience. And it's really a lovely time when your audience is also very receptive because of that collective energy. So we want to utilize this phase, but we don't want to stay in it. And this is where we often get unstuck as business owners. Because how often are you in that phase in your business? If you're really honest, how often are you creating content? How often are you putting yourself out there? How often are you going for the sale? How often are you trying to connect to your audience? You will be probably in one of two camps. Either you are the entrepreneur who is always in the building phase and you're constantly trying and aiming for that momentum, and you're going for the sale, and that is a fantastic, brilliant, wonderful thing. But if you stay in that phase all the time, you will exhaust yourself and probably your audience too. So this is not to say that you are not to sell every day, because if you have a business, you are expected to sell every day, but you don't have to be in that energy the entire time, because you can schedule it, right? So just like I have batch recorded the podcast content, I always do that when my energy is at its highest, because otherwise you will know about it. And I might actually do this as a bit of an experiment to show you the difference when we're in a different energetic phase, just so you can see. But if we are constantly in this phase of momentum, it does get very tiring. Now, if you were in the second camp, you probably never come into this phase. So you might be somebody that is more always in the planning stage. You're always planning your content. You've got loads of ideas. You've got your offers mapped out, but you're never actually putting it out in front of people or inviting them to make a purchase. So you will know which camp you are in, but I am encouraging you, through working with this framework, through working with the moon phases, that this is just 7 days of your cycle, of your month, when you're in this phase, actively in this phase. Okay, you might schedule a load of stuff so it appears from the outside that you are consistent and you're consistently showing up and you're consistently visible. However, the human you, real you, has only actually had to do that for 7 days, which is a lot more restorative, shall we say. Doesn't feel quite as exhausting. So that is phase 2. We are then into phase 3, and this is around the full moon phase. So this is going to be days 15 to 17. Okay, so it's a shorter window, and this is when you're actually in your peak energy. So just as with the full moon, it's in its fullness, so are you. Okay, so it's a very high energy period, but it is only that shorter window from days 15 to 17. So this is where you might be going out to events, where you're possibly on sales calls. It might be where you're actually delivering the thing that you've sold. It's where you're working with your clients. It's where you're harvesting all your efforts. Okay. Now, for a lot of business owners, this is also a really good opportunity to audit. So if you have had a launch in this phase, so if there is something new that you have put out to market, and you've done that in the last phase, in the build phase, During the harvest phase, you can actually audit those numbers. So you can look at the sales that have come in, you can look at your conversions, you can look at what's worked and what hasn't. Okay, so it can give you really good insights. And the reason that it's a lovely time to do that under the full moon is it's literally like you've got a spotlight. Okay, if you imagine the moon like she's shining a light on everything, so everything is visible. It's like you've got all your cards on the table and you can see exactly what's been going on, exactly what has worked and exactly what hasn't. Okay, so it's a really good time just to look and see all those things going on, plus enjoy the harvest and the fruits of your labour, as it were. So really lovely, really high energy window. It is only short, but if you're somebody who does speaking events, or you're running something like a challenge, or you're doing a masterclass, or you're going out on to networking events, or whatever it is, PR opportunities, that is a really good window. Okay, and then we go into phase 4. Okay, so this is when we're in the waning moon phase, and this is from days 18 to 29. So this is a slightly longer window, and it's not that it's often skipped, but it's not usually utilized to its full potential. So either this is where business owners just keep going and they try and hold that full moon high energy phase all the way through to the next new moon. So they try and hold that for an entire 2 weeks, which is, the thought of it alone is exhausting. You will know if that's you. So I'm calling you out with the most love in the world if that is you. What we want to do here is release and integrate. Okay, it's an integration phase. So you're going to be fulfilling on what you've sold. So just as you would be during that full moon, really short window where you're possibly welcoming new clients or customers, you're onboarding people, and then days 18 to 29, you're actually working with them really closely. So this phase is all about really deepening those relationships. So it's very much a more relaxed energy. It's a very genuine energy, and there's no real performance here. Whereas when we were in that build phase and we were creating content, or we're recording things, we're putting ourselves out there, that feels sometimes more performative because you have to show up for it, right? So we've got to be in a certain energy to be able to do that. During the waning moon phase, chances are you're not going to have that energy. Okay. For women, just to give you something to relate this to, this would be like your pre-menstruation phase. It would be when you perhaps have PMT. Okay. And we all know how we feel in that phase. We either want to hibernate or we can get a little bit aggy. So it's not the phase where you want to be necessarily out there showcasing yourself and making brand new connections, but it's a phase where you want to be with your people. Okay, you want to be connecting with your clients and building those relationships. It's a very intuitive phase as well, which is lovely. So we want to allow ourselves to rest during this phase, and that is why a lot of business owners don't appreciate it or fully utilize it, because rest can feel like it's a waste. Or we'll rest when we're on vacation, we'll rest when it's the holidays, and that is exactly what leads to so much burnout and exhaustion, and also resentment towards your own business, because you're trying to be in that build and momentum phase 24/7, and that's not how we are designed, especially as women. Okay, if you are a gent who is listening to this, your energetic cycles are different. You are more solar powered than you are lunar powered. So you will find your energy resets every 24 hours. So you may enjoy this framework as an organizational piece, but it might not actually have a direct correlation to your energy. Whereas if you are a female entrepreneur, you will find your body naturally goes through cycles just like the moon does. Okay, we have that longer energetic cycle where it takes an entire month for our hormones to go through just one cycle rather than 24 hours. So we want to allow ourselves to rest. in that final phase. Rest is important. Rest can also be active rest. You're resting, but you're still doing your job, okay? This is where you're actually working with your clients. So you're coaching, you're healing, you're mentoring, you're teaching, whatever your speciality is. This is where you're in your fully zone of genius, okay? So it feels effortless because you're just in flow, okay? So yes, it's restful because you're doing what comes easy to you. Doesn't mean you're necessarily doing nothing, although I'm a huge advocate for that as well, if that is what you need. Release anything that is not serving you. So when you've done that little full moon audit and had a look about what's worked, what hasn't, this is also where you will let that go. Okay, so if there's anything that hasn't worked, and it might not even be things that haven't worked, it might just be a case of releasing things that are good to allow space for things that are great. Okay, so that is also part of this phase, days 18 to 29, okay, where we can let go, make changes, and then we are prepared for that dark moon phase where we start to turn inward again, and then we start the planning and the mapping all over again. Okay, so when you look at this as a 4-week framework, you can see that you've done everything that you need to do. And I think a lot of the time we think, well, if we break it down into week by week, then I'm not going to get everything done. And that's just part of our conditioning, because we have been conditioned, and especially in the Western world, that we've constantly got to be visible, we've constantly got to be building, we've constantly got to be hustling and trying. And that's the beautiful thing about working with the lunar phases and the moon cycles, is it reminds you that you are a cyclical being. Your business is also cyclical. So your business will go through these phases as well, possibly on a different timeline, but your business will also have phases where it's like we need to actually be planning and preparing versus a launch phase versus a rest phase. Everything is cyclical. This is why witches love to work with these cycles. We love to work with nature, because it reminds us that we are connected to that as well. Okay, we're not separate from it. We are cyclical beings. And when you work with this framework on your business and you see that those cycles are actually ways of being more productive and more efficient and actually enjoying each phase a little bit more than when you're doing everything all at once, it actually gets to be more enjoyable. But most importantly, it puts the business owner at the center and your well-being as a priority, rather than a secondary thought and I'll rest in 6 months when I've achieved XYZ and my business is at a certain point and I can go on holiday. Okay, we want to be incorporating that every 4 weeks. And remember, if you haven't already got my framework on this, just send me a message or click the link that'll be in the show notes so you can get this framework, so you can see a lovely visual of how this all comes together as well, and just a reminder of each of the phases. But also, if you haven't already seen, we will be doing an entire 3-day experience at the start of September called The Moon is Your Business Coach. So this is working with the lunar phases, but going much, much deeper. And I'm going to talk about this a lot more in a future episode, so you can get an overview of what to expect. But right now you can jump on the waitlist. So again, check the show notes and head over to vqlifestyle.com/moon. And I will see you there for a full, gorgeous 3-day experience where we go much, much deeper with this work and how it can support you as a business owner and also your business at the same time. Okay, my loves, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Alchemy Lounge podcast. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe and share this with someone you feel would benefit from this magic as well. And remember, you can collect some freebies and goodies all over on my website, vqlifestyle.com, including the 5-day reset for your business and your well-being. And of course, the Witch's Blueprint, which is integral for your business to help show you how you can work with astrology and tarot to enhance your business in the best way possible. Thank you again, and I will see you on the next episode.